attack on Ukraine was a mistake. What is the exact mistake? And had you given Putin a deadline to actually move towards ceasefire?
The mistake was letting the war happen. If Biden were competent, and if Zelensky were competent, and I don't know that he is. We had a rough session with this guy over here. He just kept asking for more and more. That war should have never been allowed to happen. That war, I went 4 years and Putin wouldn't even bring it up. And as soon as the election was rigged and I wasn't here, that war started. There was no way that war should have been allowed to happen. And Biden should have stopped it. And you take a look at Putin. I'm not saying anybody's an angel. But I will tell you, I went 4 years and it wasn't even a question. He would never, and I told him, don't do it. You're not going to do it. And it was the apple of his eye, but there was no way that he would have done it. All you had to do is lower oil prices. If you lowered oil prices, Biden kept the prices so high because he made it impossible to get it. If you lowered oil prices, you wouldn't have had the war. But you wouldn't have had it with me anyway. That war would have never happened. And I think it's a great abuse. So now what do? You get a country where 25% of its land is gone, and the best locations, where millions of people are killed. You know, you haven't reported accurately the death. And this was Biden's war, and I'm trying to stop it. And I think we're going to do a good job. I hope we're going to do it. They lose 2,500 young people a week, think on average. Now, they're Russians and they're Ukrainians, but it's 2,000. We don't care. It's like whatever it is. They're not from your country. They're not from mine, but I want to stop it. 2,500. It's a killing field. It's like the Civil War. You take a look. I look at the satellite pictures. This should not be happening in our time. Of course, our time can be pretty violent, as we know. But that's a war that should have never been allowed to start. And Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it, and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame.
Have you spoken to President Zelensky, sir, about his offer to purchase more Patriot missile batteries?
Oh, I don't know. He's always looking to purchase missiles. You know, he's against. Listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war. Right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size and hope that people give you some missiles. If we didn't give them what we gave, remember, I gave them javelins. That's how they won their first big battle with the tanks that got stuck in the mud, and they took them out with javelins. They have an expression that Obama at the time, Obama gave them sheets and Trump gave them javelins. But it's something that should have never happened. It's a really shame. The towns are destroyed. Towns and cities are, largely destroyed. They have the spires, the beautiful spires that go up. They say that we're the most beautiful in the world in Ukraine for whatever reason, but the most beautiful in the world, they're mostly laying on their side, shattered and broken. And most importantly, you have millions of people dead because of three people. I would say three people. Let's say Putin, number one, but let's say Biden, who had no idea what the hell he was doing, number two, and Zelensky. And all I can do is try and stop it. That's all I want to do. I want to stop the killing. And I think we're doing three people. I would say three people. Let's say Putin proposals very soon.
Last question, sir. Have you attributed a motive through the FBI investigation behind the attack on Governor Josh Shapiro over the weekend?
No, I haven't, but the attacker was not a fan of Trump, I understand, just from what I read and from what I've been told. The attacker basically wasn't a fan of anybody. It's probably just a whack job. And certainly a thing like that cannot be allowed to happen.
President Bukele, the best guarantee that this time we won't terminate the temporary.
I have a great relationship with this man. I have the best relationship with him. We've known each other. I've known him since he was a very young man, as I said, very, very young. And I was impressed. I said, look here, this guy is, in fact, you sort of look like a teenager. You look like a teenager. I said,
I don't know if that's good or bad, Mr. President.
He grew up well in the last 5 years.
Do you support the extension for nationals of El Salvador under?
I support him.
Do you plan to ask him to help?
How important is it for you to send?
Go ahead, Lisa. Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CBS.
Thank you, President Trump. Do you plan to ask President
Low
Bukele
rating.
to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly
Which one is it?
deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork that needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him, President Bukele?
You are doing a great job.
Thank you, President.
Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Could you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN and they always ask it with a slant because they're totally slanting because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So we had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world. And I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
any help
Court's
to get him
asking
back?
to.
And
that-
what was the
is
ruling
that your
in the
position?
Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor?
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it per the court can only be directed to him.
I asked
Se lo
President
liberaría al
Bukele, what is
presidente
can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm suppose you're not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
How
here.
can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or whether, of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world to the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? And that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal,
Yeah,
released into our
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it. But
Yeah.
they're sick. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And
How
they
long
said
do we
that-
have to answer this question from you? Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that?
Well, it's a legal.
Why do you
dispute. I just
go
wanted to
over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it. So we have millions of people that should not be in this country that are dangerous, not just people, because we have people, but we have millions of people that are murderers, drug dealers. They've been allowed to come into our country by other countries that were very smart. When they heard this very low IQ president, and by the way, I took my cognitive exam as part of my physical exam, and I got the highest mark, and one of the doctors said, sir, I've never seen anybody get that kind of, that was the highest mark. I hope you're happy with that. Although they haven't been bugging me too much to take a cognitive, but I did do my physical and it was released. I hope you're all happy with it. I noticed there's no question, so probably you are. But the cognitive, they said to me, sir, would you like to take a cognitive test? I said, did Biden take one? No. Did anybody take one? No, not too many people took them. I said, what about Obama? Did he take one? No, he didn't take one either. I said, let me be the only one to take one. But I've actually taken them 3 times already. I like taking them because they're not too tough for me to take. But we had a great physical exam, so I know you're going to ask that. And the doctors who are total professionals. And I visited a soldier that was badly wounded, incredible soldier, lost his leg. And we spent a lot of time with him. I mean, great with his mother. And it was really a very great thing. They do a phenomenal job. I just want to say, Walter Reed, I was there for 5-6 hours. You were there with me. But I took a full physical and it came out perfecto, so that's good. She got me for a little longer.
Would the U.S. be willing to pay for those facilities to be opened if the U.S. were to be built?
I'd do something, we'd help them out, yeah, we help them. They're great facilities, very strong facilities, and they don't play games. I'd like to go a step further. I mean, I said it to Pam, I don't know what the laws are, we always have to obey the laws, but we also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking, that are absolute monsters. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country, but you'll have to be looking at the laws on that state, okay?
How essential is it for you guys to be locking up these prisoners? And do you think more presidents should follow suit like you guys as far as taking a hard stance on?
Well, I do. I think everybody has to. Stupid people. I think they're probably stupid people more so. A lot of people said they did it for the vote, but I did better with Hispanic people than they did because I always use Hispanic. I did better. You people love me. So I saw my poll numbers in your country up through the roof, right? 91%. No, they some people think they do it for the vote. But they don't have to do it for the vote. They cheat, they're professional cheaters. That's about the only thing they do well. So we just have had a great relationship, and it's become bigger because of a strange thing that's happened. I came back, we had no war in Ukraine. We had no October 7th Middle East problem. We had nothing. We had no inflation. We didn't have the Afghanistan, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, the Afghanistan, not withdrawing, because I would have been, I had it all set to bring people out with dignity and pride. That was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan. We didn't have any of that. You wouldn't have had the war with Russia and Ukraine. You wouldn't have had the Middle East problem because Iran was broke. They had no money because we had secondary sanctions on and lots of other sanctions. And now every single thing, a problem with Iran, but I'll solve that problem. That's almost an easy one. We got to solve a war that should have never started, Ukraine and Russia, and we'll get that solved. And we have to solve problems, and we already solved inflation. If you look at the numbers are incredible, actually. Stock market's up, and we're not letting other countries take advantage of this country like they have for the last 40 years. So thank you very much. You have a question, please?
Mr. President, thank you so much. You scored another major investment move this morning when NVIDIA pledged to build its AI supercomputer, the first time ever, right here in the United States.
Thank you. Now that's a question I like. That's true.
What is your reaction to this announcement, sir, and how will this positively benefit Americans across the country?
Well, it's one of the biggest announcements you'll ever hear, because NVIDIA, as you know, controls that almost the entire sector, which is one of the most important sectors in the world, between chips and semiconductors and everything else. And they're the biggest. And the other biggest we already have coming in and spending $300 billion, as you know, they announced 2 weeks ago. But NVIDIA is so highly respected. And this was an announcement that a lot of people, I knew it was going to happen, but not to the extent that it happened big. And the reason they did it is because of the election on November 5th and because of a thing called tariffs, as I say, the most beautiful word in the dictionary. After love, God, relationship, the press actually hit me. I said, tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. What about family, love, God? So I got hit even on that. You understand? I said, okay. So now I say it's my fifth most favorite word because they get you on anything. But no, that NVIDIA, it's one of the great companies of the world, modern, super modern companies, controls segments that nobody, sort of controls the world in a sense, and they're coming in here in the biggest way with hundreds of billions of dollars, not like millions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and I'm honored by it. And I want to thank Jensen and all of the people that we deal with. They're great people, they're brilliant people. And without tariffs, they wouldn't be doing it. Thank you very much.
Are you considering additional sanctions against Russia after their latest attack? And do you have an update on the rate and when you might announce them?
Well, I already have sanctions on Russia. I put them there. If you remember, Nord Stream 2, that's the big pipeline that goes through Europe. I stopped it. That's Russia's pipeline, the largest pipeline, I think, in the world, goes to Germany. And I stopped it. And when Biden came in, he approved it. And then they say, oh, I'm friendly with Russia. No. Putin said, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you when you're my enemy. I stopped the biggest economic job they ever had. I stopped it cold, right? It was dead. You know that, right? And Biden came in and he immediately approved it. What was that all about? And it's a pipeline that takes care of a lot of the needs. Now, it was a very controversial thing, but I stopped it and Biden approved it. Question?
On tariffs?
No, not you. Not you.
Pharmaceuticals,
What?
semiconductor tariffs and potentially pharmaceuticals.
Pharmaceuticals we're going to do. We don't make our own drugs, our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more, the faster they move in. The higher the tariff, it's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come. And yeah, we're going to be doing that. That's going to be like we have on cars. We have, as you know, a 25% tariff on cars. We have a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. And that's what that category fits right now.
Do you have a percentage in mind and a timeline?
I have a timeline, yeah, not too distant future. We're doing it because we want to make our own drugs. We're doing it because we want to make our own steel and aluminum, lumber, other things. And they're all coming in. We have record numbers, $7 trillion. Since I announced, like a month and a half ago, since I came in, we have over $7 trillion being invested in the country. We didn't have $1 trillion. We didn't have $500 billion for some of these guys. I didn't know what the hell they were doing. So we have the largest investment that we've ever heard of, and we're only 2 months in. And that'll continue at levels that you've never seen before. It's going to happen. And even the stock market's up today. We also, you know, a lot of people didn't say it the way it was. We had the largest gain in the stock market in history, won every single category last week. That was a nice game because we're getting lit because people didn't understand the power of our our country economically if you use it right. Do you have something to say on that, JD?
Yes, sir. I mean, look, for 40 years, we have lost manufacturing capacity. Workers have seen their wages stagnate. And some of the most critical things that we need, from the pharmaceuticals, the drugs that we give to our children, the antibiotics that we give to our kids, to the weapons that we actually need to fight a war, if God forbid we had to fight a war, we don't make enough of that stuff. And so President Trump ran explicitly on changing that. Yes, as the president mentioned, it caused a little bit of disruption in the market, but I think over the long term, workers are going to benefit, stocks are going to go up, American businesses are going to benefit as we reinvest and reindustrialize our country.
And the auto workers and the Teamsters and all of the unions, you know, not traditionally Republican, but I'm winning those unions by, we're up 40, 50 points on the Democrats. They're losing everything. They're losing everything because they just have policies that are not believable. They fight for policies that are 5% popular, and nobody knows who the 5% are. I mean, nobody can find the 5%. But if you go back to Ohio, and by the way, we have the great championship team from Ohio coming in today, right?
Very big day.
And that's going to be a little bit later. And that'll be, if you want to stick around, I'll let you. You'll see some very large people, right? You see some people that even you have not seen. People like this. These are big. These are 6'7", 380 pounds with no fat. Okay, that's pretty good. But the team, the national championship team, is being honored today at the White House, so that'll be exciting. If you're around, you want to stay around, I'll have you up there. You can tell them all about your prison, how you have to behave. Okay. Who else? Go ahead, please.
You said yesterday that you're making a decision on Iran very quickly.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Is that a decision?
Well, they have to solve their problem very quickly. Iran wants to deal with us, but they don't know how. They really don't know how. We had a meeting with them on Saturday. We have another meeting scheduled next Saturday. I said, that's a long time. You know, that's a long time. So I think they might be tapping us along. But Iran has to get rid of the concept of a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. He can't have a nuclear weapon. Nobody can have, we can't have anybody having nuclear weapons, you know? We can't have nuclear weapons. And I think they're tapping us along because we're so used to dealing with stupid people in this country. And I had Iran perfect. You had no attacks. You would have never had October 7th in Israel, the attack by Hamas, because Iran was broke. They were stone cold broke when I was president. And I don't want to do, I want them to be a rich, great nation. The only thing is, one thing, simple. It's really simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. And they got to go fast because they're fairly close to having one. And they're not going to have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us. I'm doing it for the world. And these are radicalized people,
Does that include?
and they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Does that include potential strike on Iranian nuclear facility?
Of course it does.
And just a follow-up question, clarification. You mentioned that you're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens, but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S. citizens fully naturalized Americans?
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, yeah, that includes them. What, do you think there's a special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too. And I'm all for it because we can do things with the president for less money and have great security. And we have a huge prison population. We have a huge number of prisons, and then we have the private prisons, and some are operated well, I guess, and some aren't. But he does a great job with it. We have others that we're negotiating with too. But no, if it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we are studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people, every bit as bad as the ones coming in. And I made the statement when I heard about this a long time ago now, 4 years ago, when I heard that this guy was having open borders, I said, every single criminal from all over the world is going to be dumped into our country. And that's what happened. The jails of the Congo were emptied out. The jails of Venezuela were emptied out. And you know what happened? Their crime went way down. But now Venezuela has other problems. You know what the problem is? They have no money.
Yeah.
Because I shut off their oil and we put secondary tariffs because they're not doing what's right over there. They know what to do. We spoke to them. I spoke to them. They know what to do. But they have no money. Venezuela has no money. But Iran had no money. And Iran behaved so beautifully. And then Biden took all those secondary tariffs and tariffs on. I told China, you can't buy oil. If you buy oil from Iran, China, I told it to President Xi, then we no longer want you to do business with the United States of America. And those ships disappeared from the harbor so quickly. China, get along great with China.
Are the talks with Iran productive? Do you want to continue that?
What?
The talks with Iran, do you believe those are productive? Do you want to continue that?
I think Iran could be a great country as long as it doesn't have nuclear weapons. If they have nuclear weapons, they'll never get a chance to be a great country. They will never get a chance. It won't even come close.
Sir, Harris.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yesterday you mentioned short-lived product exemptions. Which specific products are you considering and how long is short-lived? Weeks, months?
I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies where they're switching to parts that were made in Canada, Mexico, and other places. And they need a little bit of time because they're going to make them here. But they need a little bit of time. So I'm talking about things like that.
What about any Apple products, other cell phones?
Look, I'm a very flexible person. I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible. And you have to be. You just can't have a wall and you'll only go. No, sometimes you have to go around it, under it, or above it. There'll be maybe things coming up. I speak to Tim Cook. I helped Tim Cook recently, and that whole business. I don't want to hurt anybody, but the end result is we're going to get to the position of greatness for our country. We're the greatest economic power in the world if we're smart. If we're not smart, we're going to hurt our country very badly. We lost with China over the Biden years trillions of dollars on trade, trillions of dollars. And he let them fleece us. And we can't do that anymore. And you know what? I don't blame China at all. I don't blame President Xi. I like him. He likes me. I mean, who knows? Who the hell cares?
Do you have any updates on?
But you know what? What?
Do you have any updates with talks with China?
No, let me just tell you this. I don't blame China. I don't blame Vietnam. I see their meeting today. Isn't that wonderful? It's a lovely meeting. They're meeting, like trying to figure out how do we screw the United States of America? Don't forget, the European Union was formed to do just that. The European Union was formed to hurt the United States and on trade. And they get us on NATO because they don't pay their bills. But now, since I got involved, they have been paying their bills. I took in over $600 billion for NATO. Nobody took in anything. I mean, we were all delinquent. They had 8 nations out of 28 paid their bills. The rest of them were way delinquent. And I said, if you don't pay your bills, we're not going to protect you anymore. And the money poured in over 600. The Secretary General last week made that statement. He said, I've never seen anything like it. We couldn't get anybody to pay because the United States was footing the bill for NATO. Well, we got hurt there, and we got hurt on trade, likewise, European Union. And they've got to come to the table, and they're trying to. They're trying to. But the European Union has taken terrible advantage. They don't take our food products. They don't take our cars. We have millions of their cars, BMW, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, many others. They come in by the millions. They don't take. There are no Chevrolets in Munich, I can tell you that. I said to Angela Merkel, and when she was there, as she was letting millions of people infiltrate Germany, which was not so good from, we would call them illegal immigrants, but she made them legal. But I said to her, and I get along with her very well, I said, how many Chevrolets do we have in Munich or Frankfurt? Why, none, Donald, none. I said, you're right. And yet we take in millions and millions of cars. No, those days are over. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Head out the door. Thanks, guys. Let's move out. Thank you. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Move out. Thank you. Out this door. Thank you, press. Let's go. Let's go. Thank you. Let's go. Let's go.
That's open.
De lo que ocurrió dentro de la oficina oval en la Casa Blanca, este encuentro histórico, una fecha histórica en la que el presidente Nayib Bukele sostuvo esta reunión tan importante acompañado de sus ministros, la embajadora, la secretaria de Comunicaciones dentro de la Casa Blanca con el presidente Donald Trump, el secretario de Estado Marco Rubio, el vicepresidente J.D. Vance. Parte de los temas que se han hablado, bueno, el mismo presidente Donald Trump mencionaba, tienen un presidente genial, un mensaje para los salvadoreños sobre pues la popularidad que goza el presidente Nayib Bukele, como ya sabemos, uno de los líderes mejor evaluados por parte de los salvadoreños. También mencionaba, este es el momento de las mejores relaciones. Él mencionaba que tiene excelentes relaciones con el presidente Nayib Bukele y esto pues obviamente se muestra a través de esta reunión. Es uno de los pocos líderes que se ha reunido con el presidente Donald Trump acá en la Casa Blanca durante su segundo mandato. Sabemos de que ya habían tenido un encuentro previo hace algunos años y en esta ocasión ha sido recibido con todos los honores acá en la Casa Blanca, en la capital de los Estados Unidos. El presidente Nayib Bukele mencionaba, El Salvador era la capital mundial de los homicidios. Ya sabemos durante 2016 un récord de criminalidad que existía en el país y cómo a raíz de la llegada del presidente Nayib Bukele a la presidencia.
Bueno, señores, ahí
el de violencia ha ido decreciendo gracias al éxito del plan control territorial implementado.
La participación del mandatario salvadoreño en Washington, hoy estuvo acompañando al presidente Donald Trump. Creo que una de las partes más conflictivas, podríamos decir, de la conferencia, la entrevista que sostuvieron con los medios, fue cuando le hablaron del caso del joven salvadoreño de Maryland, Kilmer. Cuando se le abordó al presidente, se iba a devolver nuevamente a este salvadoreño hacia Estados Unidos. El presidente rotundamente dijo que no iba a devolver Kilmer hacia los Estados Unidos nuevamente. La prensa quiso cuestionar al mandatario salvadoreño, quiso, ¿verdad?, ponerlo entre la espada y la pared, pero el presidente fue bien enfático y dijo que cómo iba a devolver a una persona perfilada como miembro de la MS-13 nuevamente hacia territorio de los Estados Unidos. Señores, ayer estuvimos viendo cómo llegaron 10 detenidos más a territorio salvadoreño desde Guantánamo, desde Cuba. Así que, señores, esta reunión tenía muchas expectativas. Yo sé que muchos salvadoreños estaban esperando si por fin ocurría el milagro, si por fin el presidente lograba lo que ningún otro mandatario durante los últimos 24, 25 años ha logrado, y es lograr la amnistía finalmente de cientos de miles de salvadoreños que están en los Estados Unidos, ¿verdad? Bajo este parol, bajo este programa de permiso, ¿verdad? Del TPS. Todos teníamos, ¿verdad? Esa esperanza de que ese tema fuera, todavía no se sabe, pero en esta conferencia pública no se habló, ¿verdad? Según lo que estuve escuchando, mi inglés no es muy bueno, no comprendo mucho, pero dentro de las cosas que pudimos ver, pues este tema no se llevó a la mesa. Pero vamos a ver si en las horas o días que el presidente también dure en Estados Unidos, pues este tema se puede hablar y sea una gran noticia para tantos miles de salvadoreños que están esperando que su estatus migratorio sea regularizado ya finalmente en los Estados Unidos y no tengan que estar dependiendo de un TPS, de un permiso temporal que le permita estar en territorio norteamericano. Ojalá que esta reunión, más allá de la exposición del buen trabajo que está haciendo el presidente Nayib Bukele en El Salvador, de las relaciones que hoy se sigan fortaleciendo entre los gobiernos de Estados Unidos y El Salvador, pues también se logre ya finalmente que, vamos a ver si, voy a poner aquí el link para el que quiera subir y compartir con nosotros, para el que quiera subir y dialogar un poco con nosotros. Ahí voy a poner el link a ver si alguna de nuestros amigos o amigas que nos siguen, ¿verdad? Nos acompañen unos minutos si quieren hablar. Ahí voy a colocar también nuestros números de teléfono. Ahí está nuestro número de teléfono, nuestro número de WhatsApp, que quiera llamar o que quiera subir, pues ahí está nuestro número. Si usted quiere dialogar un momentito, si quiere llamarnos, abrimos nuestras líneas y sus llamadas serán recibidas. Y también si quiere subir, pues con gusto lo subimos. Si usted quiere acompañarnos, pues súbase. Ahí está Ceci, está Sandy. Hay 15 personas conectadas. Cualquiera de ustedes que quiera subir, pues le aceptamos a que comparta con nosotros un momento. Si usted, ¿verdad? De esos que dominan el inglés perfectamente, que estuvo mirando la participación del presidente Bukele en Washington, pues también vamos a ver qué dice aquí. Interesante, porque definitivamente hay muchas cosas de las que publicaron, temas domésticos, temas que atañen. Vamos a poner un poco el audio de lo que dice el comunicador.
Lo que representa El Salvador a nivel internacional, y ahora mismo el presidente Donald Trump está refrendando esa actividad. Dijo algunas palabras importantes, que estaba respaldando al presidente Nayib Bukele en muchas de las acciones que realiza. Esto le da muchísima trascendencia, porque al final de cuentas es necesario que El Salvador conozca, que el mundo entero sepa qué es lo que está sucediendo en nuestra nación, sobre todo los cambios. Ahora prácticamente damos por sentada la seguridad, pero todo depende de un gran trabajo, de una amplia actividad que ha tenido el presidente Nayib Bukele desde el 2019, cuando llegó a la presidencia de la República. Ahora mismo estamos muy cerca de los 900 días sin homicidios. Estamos muy cerca también de erradicar completamente el accionar de las pandillas, y justamente recién salimos de la oficina oval junto a los presidentes, donde en este instante se han quedado ellos en carácter privado junto a sus dos comitivas. Pues en este momento esto es lo que es más importante. De hecho, la prensa es bastante activa en ese sentido, y muchos han estado preguntando qué es lo que está pasando en El Salvador, y que si de alguna manera se está retomando algunos ejemplos que en nuestro país y desde la presidencia del presidente Nayib Bukele se pueden ejecutar en esta nación de los Estados Unidos. Por supuesto, el presidente Nayib Bukele sostendrá más tarde otros encuentros, y de acuerdo con la embajadora de El Salvador en Washington, Milena Mayorga, nos estaba revelando un poco de la agenda que van a desarrollar. Después tienen un almuerzo entre los funcionarios más cercanos, entre el presidente Donald Trump y también el presidente de la República, Nayib Bukele. Sobre todo, esta reunión se va a extender incluso después de que el presidente Nayib Bukele abandone la Casa Blanca. Sus respectivas comitivas van a establecer actividades y reuniones interesantes entre ambas delegaciones, y específicamente no solo hoy, sino que también 2 días después habrá otros encuentros y otros enlaces entre ellos para discutir temas en específico y algunos elementos que puedan, al final de cuentas, solucionar aspectos domésticos de esta nación, de los Estados Unidos, y tomando como ejemplo lo que está sucediendo en El Salvador y todas las acciones en seguridad, en materia del combate al crimen, en materia del combate a las estructuras delictivas. Dentro de la conferencia de prensa, dentro de la actividad allí mismo, dentro de la Casa Blanca, específicamente del Salón Oval, estuvo presente el vicepresidente J.D. Vance y también sus altos funcionarios de seguridad, como por ejemplo Kristi Noem, la secretaria de seguridad de este país y quien recientemente estuvo allá mismo en El Salvador. Estas cosas trascienden porque al final de cuentas representa la importancia, el peso y por qué el presidente Nayib Bukele se encuentra acá. Y exactamente él como líder de nuestra nación y como líder también global, al lado del presidente Donald Trump, están haciendo actividades trascendentales para sus respectivos países. Nosotros continuamos dentro de la Sala Blanca, de la Casa Blanca, mejor dicho, y dentro de la Sala Oval se mantienen los funcionarios, como les estoy comentando. Así es que con estos enlaces que hemos realizado junto a Salomón Rugamas, despedimos la transmisión en este instante, pero por supuesto tenemos muchas cosas más de qué hablar sobre la actividad obtenida y sobre las declaraciones de ambos presidentes ahí mismo en la oficina, en el despacho presidencial del gobernante Donald Trump.
Bueno, señores, ahí ustedes estuvieron escuchando. No es para menos, señores. No es para menos. Miren, hace cerca de una semana, esta publicación que fue muy compartida por los medios salvadoreños, aunque no le gusta a los opositores, aquellos que dicen que el país, que esto, que bueno, saludito Margarita. Hace 6 días, justamente el día 8 de abril, el gobierno de los Estados Unidos ajustó la alerta de viaje a El Salvador con el nivel más bajo de riesgo tras avances en seguridad. O sea, por algo el mandatario estadounidense Donald Trump invitó a los Estados Unidos a la Casa Oval allá en Washington al mandatario salvadoreño. Señores, miren, no sé como extranjero cuál fue la última vez o cuándo fue la última vez que El Salvador estaba en un nivel 1 de seguridad. ¿Algún salvadoreño que esté aquí presente me puede afirmar cuándo fue la última vez que El Salvador estaba en un nivel 1? Que su alerta no fuera negativa. Y esto, señores, es lo que se ha destacado internacionalmente, que los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica tenga la seguridad, la tranquilidad, la confianza de decirles a sus ciudadanos: El Salvador es meramente seguro para viajar y hacer turismo. Ah, pero eso no le gusta porque dicen algunos, con eso no se come. Dice Susana, nunca que yo recuerde. Óigame bien, Estados Unidos ajusta alerta de viaje a El Salvador con el nivel más bajo de riesgo tras avances en seguridad. O sea, eso para un grupo no es importante, pero para la mayoría de salvadoreños sí. ¿Por qué? Porque esto también abre la oportunidad a los Estados Unidos de brindarle a El Salvador también la apertura a que sus ciudadanos puedan tener mejor posibilidad de viajar legalmente. Hay cosas que la gente no comprende. Miren, es imposible que de un país alto en violencia, en inseguridad, cuando un ciudadano de ese país va a un consulado, a una embajada, a solicitar que ese país le dé entrada, cuando hay tantos niveles de inseguridad, ese país dice: yo no me voy a correr el riesgo de visar a tantas personas porque hay muchos que no están dentro del sistema, no están regularizados o identificados como criminales, delincuentes, mareros, pandilleros, y por eso es que lamentablemente el número de visa de El Salvador es tan reducido anualmente. Y por eso es que lamentablemente muchos optan en gastar 4, 5, 6, 7 veces más de lo que vale solicitar una visa normalmente, yéndose por tierra, porque saben que la posibilidad de recibir una visa en el consulado es muy mínima. Pero ahorita, como está la situación de seguridad en El Salvador, todo eso va a comenzar a cambiar. Mire, yo estoy seguro que todos esos temas van a comenzar a ser puestos sobre la mesa, sobre el gobierno de El Salvador y el gobierno de los Estados Unidos. Porque hoy en día ya no cualquiera se atreve a ir a una institución donde lo puedan depurar, donde lo puedan identificar como miembro de una estructura criminal para buscar una visa. Esa gente anda escondida. Esa gente anda huyendo. Ahora, todo el hombre y mujer honrado, honrada, de trabajo, que tiene sus recursos para poder decir, bueno, voy a tirar la aventura. Ya mi país es visto de otra manera internacionalmente. Ya mi país no es visto como el más violento, el más inseguro. Ya nosotros los salvadoreños podemos levantar la cara, la frente en alto y decir, soy del Salvador, porque allí está el mejor presidente del mundo. Todas esas cosas van a afectar positivamente a El Salvador. Porque hoy en día quienes están demostrando quiénes son los verdaderos, miren señores, una de las cosas por el cual yo me motivé a viajar a El Salvador en el 2020 era por eso, porque yo no quería únicamente quedarme con la idea, con lo que me decían de que era un país inseguro y violento. Yo digo, sí, pero en medio de la inseguridad, en medio de la violencia, tiene que haber un pueblo honrado, trabajador, que todo el mundo debe conocer, que son la mayoría de los salvadoreños y salvadoreñas. Así que yo, miren, señores, honestamente, yo espero que esta reunión que se está manteniendo ahora, no lo que se vio públicamente, sino lo que va a salir de esta reunión, sea favorable. El presidente ha demostrado que donde por años se dijo que era imposible, que no se podía, él ha logrado poco a poco, junto con su cuerpo de ministros, su asamblea legislativa, los policías, los soldados, hacer lo que nunca se pensó durante muchos años, que es levantar la imagen del país, que es restaurar, instaurar la seguridad ciudadana, que es permitirle al pueblo de a pie vivir libremente en su propio país, hacer una vida pública sin temor a las pandillas, a las maras, que hoy se vive, señores. Es importante que usted entienda que lo que se ha hecho en El Salvador no solamente ha repercutido a lo interno, sino también externamente, porque tanto turistas que hoy están pisando El Salvador se debe a eso. Y yo sé que el milagro, como le puse en el título de este video, ¿logrará el milagro? Señores, ojalá que sí. Esos salvadoreños que desde el 2001 están viviendo bajo la condición de permiso, se merecen ya, con sus años de trabajo, pagando impuestos, viviendo honradamente, dando el todo por hacer que su vida en los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica sea una vida honrada, una vida de producción, una vida de honestidad, de integridad, una vida justa. También se merecen que ellos ya puedan recibir esa amnistía oficial donde se le pueda dar una residencia ya permanente y puedan tener un estatus migratorio definitivo como lo que son hombres y mujeres honradas. Señores, lo que se espera en El Salvador, yo estoy seguro que será grande. Así que, señores, muchísimas gracias a los que se conectaron a este en vivo. Vamos a pausar, vamos a buscar ahora esos cortes importantes de esta reunión y vamos a reaccionar conforme a lo que hoy se habló en la Casa Blanca entre el mandatario Donald Trump y el presidente Nayib Bukele. Soy su hermano y amigo Indiomar Villanueva de esta su página Hay que hablarlo con Indiomar. Hasta la próxima.